saints, oh, marching in.
Like
When the
and
saints
subscribe.
go marching.
We were moved from Middlefield to Pine Brook, at which time we were earning maybe more than $45 a week, but not much.
Yeah.
And Dr. Rao moved in, a single man, just down the block from us. And after a while, he came to me, to Tom, and he said, "My wife is coming from home. She doesn't speak English, but I have a daughter, and I want my wife and daughter with me." So from India came Mrs. Rao in the middle of winter, no coat, and her little girl, I think, was 7 at the time. And every single day, I talked to her on the phone.
To improve her English.
Yes, and she watched television. And Dr. Rao was so appreciative of making her a part of the community.
That's right.
They came to church, single file, walked up Bloomfield Avenue, he first, Mrs. Rao, and VJ. And they came to church regularly, and when she met, several years later, expected a new baby, we had a shower for them, and the baby was named Jaya after me.
How about that?
And I still visit, Jaya visits me.
Yeah.
And I have a picture of her, of their son Ram. Had Mrs. Rao died before she got to know her grandson, but they still come see us.
This is his grandchild?
This is Dr. Rao's grandchild.
Grandchild, yeah.
He died.
Oh, yeah.
A very important part of our life was where when we went to his, he died, and we went, while the children were all small and we were teaching Mrs. Rao English, and the ladies took her in. They were not Christian. And Dr. Rao, before Mrs. Rao came, had been so hungry for native food, his own food.
Indian
and
food,
Tom was at Drew at the time. And so Tom said, there are Indians and Pakistanis in school. Why don't, when Mrs. Rao comes, you invite her, invite these people for a home-cooked meal.
Yeah.
And she loved it.
Absolutely.
But 6 men came loving to talk and catch up and talk to each other. Mrs. Rao stood in that corner, and I stood, and we waited.
Oh, because of the...
they were men.
serving first.
They had much in common, and we weren't intelligent enough to follow along. So this was my learning about other cultures than my own. Mrs. Rao, when she died, it was such a sad thing. They moved to Florida after Jaya, and Jaya was born in Pine Brook. I had the shower for her. Tom was moved to Kearney. We kept in touch. And that's why I know all the... I took her to the hospital when her daughter was born. I sat with her.
Okay.
And so Jaya really feels a part of our family.
Yeah, that's true.
So and Dr. Rao would talk to us about God, that he loved our church, and that there is one God, and that he found comfort in our church. He never became a Christian, but it taught me to love people where they are and who they are. And I had all kinds of connections. Anyhow,
right.
after Pine Brook, where the Rows were large, we had a wonderful congregation.
So when you say Pine Brook, it
that
was in
Tom's
New Jersey.
first parish.
Was it still in New York or was it in New Jersey?
Pine Brook is New Jersey.
Oh,
We
that's right.
moved from Middlefield. They transferred when Tom was qualified for Drew. And so
That's right.
then he was transferred. This all went through DS's.
Yes, true.
The DS up there and contacted
DS in New
the Newark
Jersey. Yeah,
Conference, which is what it was. And Tom was a Drew student. And we had to think very carefully about leaving Middlefield, even though ministry was the goal. You love the people.
That's true.
And the people need you and you need them. And so it was a wrenching move, but Pine Brook we stayed 13 years.
Very unusual in
yes,
those days.
Because we built a new church there.
Oh.
We moved from Route 46. The old church was on a rock. And we had a wonderful supper one night, fish dinner, and the drains in the kitchen just kind of settled on that rock, and the whole
Really? Church smells like fish.
Fish. And, those kinds of experiences. The people then, having grown in the congregation, decided they needed to move away from this location right on Route 46, no parking.
Oh, okay.
So we moved to a new church, and we just loved. I had then a new baby. That made 4.
Well, 4.
And the other 3 were all active in church school. And, of course, because I had helped Tom working in Drew, he said, now, Joyce, you have to finish college. So with only 1 year at Elmira, 2 years, I ended up going to Rutgers, and I said, I can't do that. I have
4 children.
Yeah. Tom said, you go, I can manage. Well, he managed beautifully,
yeah.
But our son Peter was 10 by then.
Wow.
And Peter was a wonderful bather of Kenny, our youngest.
Yes, okay.
And when Tom he learned to bathe him because Tom would sit Kenny in the bathtub and wash him, but he left the water on when the phone rang, and came back and Kenny is sitting in the water. Thereafter, the older kids supervised because Tom had so many things.
Oh, absolutely.
But it was a wonderful experience, and Kearney, because of its Scotch-Irish community, became a part of the Peace Women movement in Ireland.
Oh, is it?
Just because contact somehow through the church and the community, he became connected to 475 Riverside Drive, and Dave Bowman, who was a Catholic priest who was in charge of the religious outreach of the section that he was in, and he said to Tom, one of yours is coming. Well, that meant it was a Protestant coming. And so we met George Johnston with a sign at the airport, and from that, still today, we have visited Scotland 5 times. We have been to the Shetland Islands, to the Orkney Islands, where George's family had been. And he, because of the connection with Ireland, he was a youth worker on the Shankill Road in Belfast.
Okay.
We became connected then to Ireland, and the Belfast Central Mission had a wonderful man named Eric Gallagher who actually came to America. We went with an exchange ministry to Ireland for a summer during the Troubles. By then, Kenny was a high school. And he worked with elderly women as a kind of a companion where they put together the Protestant women in Belfast and invited the Catholic women up from Dublin to get to know one another.
Yeah.
And our time in that area led us to know that these people did not even know a Catholic, and that the Catholic didn't even know a Protestant.
Yeah.
And so working through the Belfast Central Mission, Eric Gallagher, Sidney Callahan, Tom got to annual conference. I have a picture of him who, through our connection, came to annual conference to talk about Ireland. And I have worked, it's too much stuff.
No, it's okay. I enjoy.
This is all about Dr. Rao. Oh, this was in Englewood. But at any rate, here it is. This is in Kearney. This was when Sidney died. He had preached here in short, it's not too long after, Christian first, Protestant second. We lived in Belfast and knew Sidney and knew it was just a connection, once again, who branched us out to know Christians and cultures other than our own. I was invited to an Orangeman's with Tom for supper. And of course the Orangemen wouldn't even talk to a Catholic. And we were at their house for supper.
No, this happened in Ireland?
In Belfast, while we were on the exchange.
Right. So, yeah. Help us what Orangemen are. Some of
Orangemen are the Protestant, still believing in connection to England only.
That's right.
And
they're very hostile against the Catholics,
the
people
Catholic,
in the island.
period.
Yeah.
We left their house for supper, walked to our car, and down the street, walking backwards, were armed soldiers, just guarding the street.
Yeah.
And I thought, we're living here with an armed, angry, distinctly different crowd of people, which again was a wonderful learning experience.
Yes.
Because what we did then with the people in the churches that Tom was connected with there was always trying to bring a little bit different look at. We had people meeting Catholics for the first time, getting together. If you've seen that movie by Kenneth Branagh on television, that Ireland that was just shown this year is what he grew up with and what we experienced. And it was a matter of the love of Jesus in the Belfast mission, which reached out always to whomever was in need. And that was an experience we had. Again, how did this happen? God is at work in such interest, because Kearney brought us to this whole community. He is shot down in an airplane. This happened after killed in crash. We got the news that Boris had been killed, and this was in February 26, 2004. Whoa. So we